All right, let's get right into it. This isn't your average geopolitical briefing. I want you to think of this as a confidential file, the kind that gets slid across a dark desk in a smoke-filled room. We're about to break down the Arctic Standoff, but what you're really looking at here, well, it's not news. It's a death certificate for the old way of doing things.
So, for the better part of a century, the US and Canada, they're basically playing a co-op game. You know, a geopolitical joint bank account. It all started back in the Cold War, got cemented with things like NAFTA, shared borders, shared banking, shared defense. Simple. Well, that whole era, it's over. Prime Minister Mark Carney just flipped the switch, turned the whole relationship upside down. And in this new high-stakes poker game, your pension, that's the ante.
Okay, so every good heist needs a setup, right? And this is it. Welcome to Act 1. This is where we meet the players, figure out what the prize is, and it's all about Greenland, and we watch the big, public fight that's really just designed to keep us from looking at what's actually going on behind the curtain.
Now this is where the game mechanics completely change. We've literally gone from an 80-year-long cooperative campaign to a brutal zero-sum player-versus-player match. So what was the trigger? Well, the US administration decided it wanted to buy Greenland. To Washington, Greenland isn't just a big chunk of ice, it's a strategic chessboard. It controls future Arctic shipping lanes, and it's sitting on mountains of rare earth minerals. So when Canada and Denmark said no deal, the US didn't just walk away disappointed. No, they threatened to basically cripple the Canadian economy with tariffs, trying to wipe out decades of partnership in one move.
And here is Canada's answer. It's not some quiet diplomatic note. It's a check for $7.2 billion. And you've got to understand, this isn't just another line item in a budget. This is the single biggest jump in defense spending in Canadian history. It's a statement, written in capital letters. This is the price tag for saying no to Washington, and it's a promise to back up the tough talk with new hardware, more people, and brand new bases on the ice.
The money is one thing, but this number, this is the physical reality of the standoff. We're talking about more than 850 Canadian troops being sent north for what they're calling sovereignty protection exercises. And look, this isn't some token force for a photo op. It's almost double the number of troops from the year before. Carney is putting boots on the ground in places like Resolute Bay and Cambridge Bay to send a message that couldn't be clearer. We're done talking. This is about physically controlling the very territory the US wants to dominate.
This table right here, it just lays out the massive scale of this buildup. It's not just about throwing more soldiers up north. Look closer. We're going from one frigate that's there part-time to a near-constant naval presence with dedicated coastal ships. We're swapping out our old workhorse Griffin helicopters for the CH-148 Cyclone, which is, let's be crystal clear, an anti-submarine warfare helicopter. And on top of that, we're adding the CP-140 Aurora, a long-range spy plane. The real story here isn't just the numbers, it's the change in capability. We are building a permanent, multi-layered military force in the Arctic designed for one thing: to watch and counter American pressure.
But here comes the first big twist. This is where the plot really thickens. While all the headlines are screaming about a trade war, this number right here tells the real story: $174 billion. That's how much Canadian oil, gas, and electricity is still flowing south, completely untouched by any of these tariffs. Insiders have a name for it: the bifurcated economy. Publicly, it's an all-out PvP brawl. Privately, the energy corridor is a protected, safe zone. Why? Well, because our economies are so tangled up that cutting off that energy flow would be, quite literally, mutually assured destruction. It's a sham independence, a geopolitical stage play for all of us to watch.
So that brings us to Act 2. If you can't really decouple your energy sector, what's your next move? Simple. You build a fortress somewhere else. And Carney's plan is incredibly audacious. He wants to build a technologically independent Canada, a silicon fortress, to try and escape the constant threat of American economic bullying.
So how do you even begin to build a fortress like that? You follow this four-step playbook. Step 1, you pick a very public fight, a tariff war, targeting important US goods like computer servers, just to show you're serious. But then, and this is the really clever part, step 2 is a tactical retreat. After just 172 days, Canada quietly got rid of those server tariffs. Why? Because they were actually hurting our own tech industry. The real move is step 3, procurement as protectionism. Instead of a clumsy weapon like tariffs, you use the government's own wallet. Ottawa created a new rule that gives Canadian companies a 25% bonus on their evaluation score for tech contracts. Mathematically, it just blocks U.S. firms from winning. And the whole thing is paid for by Step 4, a massive sovereign AI fund, to build our own data infrastructure from scratch.
Of course, every fortress has a weakness, and this is it, the Silicon Trap. It's a state of, let's call it, 404 sovereignty. You might own the building, the server racks, all the physical stuff. But the intellectual property, the actual brains of the operation, that's all licensed from another country. And what that does is it creates this hidden dependency, a massive vulnerability that can be exploited at any second. It's a kill switch, and someone else's finger is resting right on it.
And here it is, the fatal flaw in the entire plan laid out right in front of us. Our so-called sovereign AI is being built on American foundations. Get this, 3 of the 5 big contract winners are building their entire systems around US-designed GPUs, specifically Nvidia's CUDA architecture. What that means is that the Canadian-assembled servers, the big AI models, even the prototype for the new digital Loonie, all of it is hard-coded to run on American intellectual property. We're building our fortress out of American bricks, and Washington can tell the brick factory to shut down whenever it wants.
This chart just visualizes the absolute catastrophe waiting to happen. The digital Loonie, Canada's financial lifeboat in this whole trade war, is optimized for these American chips. It's designed to handle 25,000 transactions per second. That's what you need to run a modern economy. But what happens if the US hits us with an export ban on those specific GPUs? Performance collapses by 90%. It's not just a little slower, it becomes totally unusable for national commerce. Imagine the entire Interact network just grinding to a halt. The whole sovereign compute strategy has one single point of failure, and that switch is located in Washington, D.C.
Which brings us to Act 3. So, the plan is deeply flawed, the risk is absolutely astronomical, so you have to be asking, where is all the money for this massive gamble coming from? Well, this is the twist. The funding is being pulled from the one vault that every single person in this country thought was completely untouchable.
$777 billion. That's the Canada Pension Plan. That's your pension, my pension. For decades, the people who run the CPP have had one job: be a smart global investor and get the best possible returns to make sure we can all retire. But now, under this new Carney doctrine of strategic autonomy, its entire mission is being rewritten. It's being repurposed, nudged, they call it, to stop chasing the best investments around the world and start financing these incredibly risky, nation-building projects right here at home.
Now, the really dangerous thing here is this concept, the liquidity trap. Your pension works because it holds assets, stocks, bonds, that can be sold to pay out benefits. But when you start sinking billions of dollars into long-term, highly specialized infrastructure in the Arctic, you're locking that money up for decades. For any Bamers out there, think of it as inventory lock. All your best gear is suddenly soul-bound to a quest that you might not finish for 50 years. For everyone else, it's like trading your stock portfolio for a half-built bridge. You can't exactly sell a bridge piling to pay for your groceries.
And these aren't hypotheticals. These are the actual projects your retirement fund is now building. Not high-growth tech stocks, not stable international real estate, but operational support hubs in Resolute Bay, satellite ground stations in Inuvik, dual-use military and civilian runways. Look, these are assets for national security. They're not liquid, return-generating investments. So the bottom line is, the government is using the National Pension Plan as its own private bank to make geopolitical moves, and your retirement, that's the collateral.
And that brings us to the one question that should be keeping every skeptical investor awake at night. Because when the next market crash comes and you need that money, this is what your portfolio is starting to look like. It just crystallizes the risk perfectly. And the answer, of course, is no. You can't sell a half-finished naval port to pay out retirement benefits.
Okay, let's get to the final act. The plan has hit a major snag. The funding source is, well, it's suspect, and the clock is ticking. Canada needs an escape plan, a way to get out of this high-stakes game with its skin intact, and that means it's time to make a desperate, almost unthinkable bargain.
This is the deal on the table. It's called the Grand Bargain, okay? For 100 years, the U.S. has said the Northwest Passage is an international strait, which means their warships and submarines can go through whenever they want. Canada has always claimed it's our own internal water. So now, Washington is saying, okay, we're willing to formally agree with you, the passage is yours. The price? We have to fully integrate our military into their Golden Dome missile defense system, which means we basically become the northern shield for the entire continent. It is the ultimate Judas choice.
You gain a prize you've wanted for a century, but you do it by sacrificing your own autonomy.
And this just lays out the two paths forward perfectly. On one side, you have the Sovereign Bridge. This is Carney's preferred plan. It's expensive, it's risky, but it's an independent path built by making alliances with Europe and the Nordic countries. On the other side, you have the Golden Dome. That's the American offer. It's safer, it's more stable, it protects key industries like steel and aluminum from tariffs, but it means we hand over our military and foreign policy independence for generations.
Let's just break down these trade-offs, line by line. Under sovereignty, we won a historic, century-long victory over the Northwest Passage. But we lose actual control of our own Arctic defense. Under economy, we get a permanent shield from crippling tariffs. But the price is a defense spending target of 5% of our entire GDP. Just for context, that is more than double the NATO target. It's a massive, permanent drain on our national budget. And for status, we get a 100-year geopolitical win, but we become the literal frontline shield for the United States. We might win the map, but we could lose the country.
And these are the Prime Minister's own words from Davos that really just underscore how serious this is. He said, "We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. This isn't just a temporary squabble or a small policy change. It's a fundamental break from the past. And whatever happens from this rupture is going to define Canada's place in the world for the next 100 years."
So, we end right where we began, with a question. The deal is on the table. Canada can finally win its century-long fight for the Northwest Passage. But if the price for that is to become a shield for another nation and to pay for it with our own pensions, what is the true cost of sovereignty? And when all is said and done, who really owns the ice?